From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Since January 28, 2011, we have said that the military council is worse than Mubarak's regime. It now becomes clear that after 15 months of the revolution, there were clear signs of the bad intentions of the military council.
A judicial coup in Egypt days before the country's presidential runoff. Egypt's Supreme Court dissolves the newly elected parliament, handing power back to the military. The court also confirms Hosni Mubarak's former prime minister can run for president. We'll go to Cairo to speak with Sharif Abdel-Qaddous. Then Mitt Romney and President Obama give major addresses on the U.S. economy in Ohio.
Look around Ohio, look around the country, and you'll see that a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people have had some real tough times.
The debate in this election is about how we grow faster and how we create more jobs and how we pay down our debt. That's the question facing the American voter.
As the financial crisis wipes out 2 decades of wealth for the average U.S. household, why has President Obama failed to support increasing the minimum wage despite his promise in 2008?
And I won't be raising the minimum wage every 10 years. We're going to raise the minimum wage every single year to keep pace with inflation. Because if you're working, you shouldn't be poor in America.
Today, longtime consumer advocate and former presidential candidate Ralph Nader on the minimum wage, poverty, and the presidential race.
He still is not able to use the word poverty. It's always the middle class, which is shrinking into poverty. But you've got 60, 70, 80 million people living in poverty in the United States and child poverty.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Protests have erupted in Egypt after the country's Supreme Constitutional Court ruled to dissolve the newly elected parliament and decreed former regime leaders can hold political office. The decision to annul the Muslim Brotherhood-led parliament effectively places legislative power in the hands of the ruling Supreme Council of Armed Forces, which has managed Egypt's transition since the ouster of President Hosni Mubarak in February of 2011. The Muslim Brotherhood has slammed the decision, calling it a coup. The court also rubber-stamped the candidacy of Mubarak's former prime minister and current presidential hopeful, Ahmed Shafiq, just 2 days before he's supposed to square off against Muslim Brotherhood candidate Mohamed Morsi. We'll go to Cairo to speak with Democracy Now!'s Sharif Abdel-Qaddous after headlines. In news from Syria, violence and shelling by Syrian troops have been reported across the country as the government attempts to reclaim areas held by rebels opposed to President Bashar al-Assad. The attacks come a day after UN monitors described widespread carnage in the village of Al-Hefa in northwestern Syria, which had been under siege by government forces. Monitors who toured the town found it was largely deserted, with buildings torched and the stench of dead bodies still in the air. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch is reporting Syrian government forces have used extensive sexual violence to torture men, women and boys detained during the uprising. The group reports soldiers and pro-government militias have sexually abused women and girls as young as 12 while sweeping through residential areas and raiding homes. Britain's Supreme Court has rejected WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's bid to have it reconsider its approval of Assange's extradition to Sweden. Swedish authorities want to question Assange over accusations of rape and sexual assault made by 2 Swedish women. Assange's lawyers had argued the Swedish public prosecutor does not have the legal authority to issue the arrest warrant, as Assange has not even been formally charged. But British judges ruled against Assange late last month and reaffirmed their decision Thursday. Assange has been given another 14 days to leave Britain. Attorneys say he may file a last-ditch appeal to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Supporters have voiced fears Assange will wind up in the hands of the United States should he be deported. The U.S.-led occupation of Afghanistan has reached the milestone of 2,000 dead U.S. service members in the nearly 12-year war. The number of Afghans killed during that same period is unknown, but far greater. Bahraini medics spoke out on Thursday, one day after an appeals court upheld their convictions for treating demonstrators during anti-government protests. 9 medics received sentences ranging from 1 month to 5 years, while none others had their cases dismissed. 2 of the medics, Doctors Hassan Daif and Ali Al-Akri, said their convictions are baseless.
The only crime that we have done is treating the wounded people. This sentence is very harsh. We consider it inappropriate, and it does not suit medical personnel who've been in practice for the last 23 years.
I did express and march and rally against the ex-minister Al-Hamar, who was sacked in a week time by the king himself. That was my only crime, if they consider it. I have 5 years. It's quite clear that this is a political verdict.
The trial of the medical personnel is seen as a key test of the U.S.-backed Bahraini monarchy's avowed commitment to political reform. In response to the verdict, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, Michael Posner, said the U.S. is, quote, deeply disappointed by the convictions. The Obama administration resumed military shipments to Bahrain last month after a half-year pause. More than 50 international aid groups and UN agencies have issued a joint appeal for an end to the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. The signatories include Amnesty International, Save the Children, the World Health Organization, Oxfam, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and 5 other UN bodies. Issuing the appeal on Thursday, UN and aid officials said Israel's repeated attacks on Gaza have poisoned its water supply.
It has been said many times, but today is an important day in which to repeat it. The blockade is illegal according to international law.
Now today, 95% of the coastal aquifer, 95%, the sole source of fresh water available for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, is not safe to drink.
Thursday's appeal came on the 5th anniversary of the blockade, when Israel sought to punish Gaza after Hamas preempted a U.S.-backed coup to subvert the results of 2006 Palestinian elections. The Washington Post has revealed private U.S. contractors have been using spy planes to secretly search for Ugandan rebel leader Joseph Kony since at least 2009. Hired by the U.S. military, the contractors have flown unmarked spy planes over large swaths of Africa, ostensibly targeting al-Qaeda and other militants. The planes are equipped with high-tech sensors and cameras that can film people from 10 miles away. Kony, who heads the Lord's Resistance Army, received new attention this year after an online video condemning him went viral. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit filed on behalf of a group of Guatemalans who were unknowingly exposed to syphilis, gonorrhea, and other sexually transmitted diseases by U.S. researchers in the 1940s. Under the experiments, U.S. medical officials intentionally infected more than 2,000 Guatemalan sex workers, prisoners, soldiers, and mental patients to study the effects of penicillin. On Thursday, U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton said federal laws bar suits for harm caused abroad. The Obama administration had argued for the case's dismissal, saying sovereign immunity protects federal health officials from litigation stemming from the experiments. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez has disclosed his government has begun producing surveillance drones after reports emerged U.S. prosecutors are examining Venezuela's drone program. In a televised speech, President Chavez said the country has built 3 drones with help from Iran, but plans to use them only for defensive purposes.
Y una fábrica de aviones no tripulados, claro.
We are also building a factory of unmanned drones. Of course we are doing it. And we have all the right to do so. Probably we wouldn't have the right to do it if we were a colony. We are a free and independent country. Here, all Venezuelans rule, and not the Yankee Empire or their footmen.
Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair found himself on the receiving end of an attempted citizen's arrest in Hong Kong Thursday as he took the stage to deliver an address. Blair had just been introduced to the crowd when activist Tom Grundy called for his arrest for helping the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003.
Thank you, everyone, for coming along this afternoon.
Blair, I'm conducting a citizen's arrest for crimes against peace under the Hong Kong Power 101 law. You misled the British people. You caused the deaths of at least 100,000 people.
Excuse me, I think we are having
police are obliged to support your arrest.
A lot of people have come
the Iraq War defied the Nuremberg Principles, the UN Charter, the Geneva Convention, and a pending international court Rome Statute. You can't talk about faith when you set back religious tolerance decades.
Thank you. I think you've made your point. Thank you very much.
I can wait with him for the police.
Sorry, you have to go, I'm afraid. So, well, you made your point. There it is. And that's democracy for you. So,
I'm sure you're used to this all the time.
I am used to it. But it's...
You should be a war criminal.
With that, the protester left the room, and Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, continued his address. The Texas billionaire R. Alan Stanford has been sentenced to 110 years in prison for running a massive Ponzi scheme that defrauded victims of around $8 billion. Stanford was found guilty of using his Antigua-based bank to defraud investors by selling them phony certificates of deposit. It was the biggest known case of investment fraud since the Ponzi scheme run by New York financier Bernie Madoff. After the sentencing Thursday, 2 of Stanford's victims spoke out.
He refuses to accept blame. I think, in a lot of ways, he's shown sociopathic behavior. I mean, his world is about Alan Stanford, and it's not about all of these people who lost their savings. These were just numbers to him.
I called Stanford. I told him, you deserve what you get. You are a dirty, rotten scoundrel. And that's what he is, exactly. No remorse at all for the lives of victims all over the world.
Virginia's Circuit Court has appointed an openly gay prosecutor to the bench just 1 month after state lawmakers rejected his judicial nomination. Tracy Thorne-Begland, a former Navy officer and fighter pilot, failed to gain the necessary majority in May after Republican opponents said he would push an activist agenda. Thorne-Begland was the only candidate among more than 3 dozen judicial nominees to be rejected. 2 decades ago, Thorne-Begland publicly disclosed his sexual orientation in a challenge to the military's ban on openly LGBT service members. Republicans accused him of homosexual advocacy and said his sexual orientation would render him unable to be impartial. His appointment Thursday is only temporary until Virginia lawmakers begin their next session. Undocumented activists have occupied 4 Obama campaign offices around the country in support of the DREAM Act, which would grant children of undocumented immigrants a path to citizenship. Since Wednesday, the activists have staged sit-ins at Obama for America offices in Oakland, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, and Detroit. Obama has voiced support for the DREAM Act, but the activists are urging him to issue an executive order stopping the deportation of undocumented immigrants. The joint actions come days after 2 undocumented students occupied Obama's Denver campaign office and staged a hunger strike. Organizers say similar protests will continue until the November elections. And the father of the slain black teenager Trayvon Martin has issued a Father's Day appeal for a nationwide review of Stand Your Ground, the purported self-defense law that critics say enabled his son's murder. In a video circulated on the internet, Tracy Martin urged supporters to pressure their local governors on similar laws in their state.
This Father's Day will be the first without my son, Trayvon. I'll say a prayer for all the dads across America who share this grief with me. Last year, 30,000 fathers lost a son or a daughter from senseless gun violence. Dads, we have to come together to protect our children. I'm asking you to consider sharing this message with the governor of your state that has a similar Stand Your Ground law. Ask them to review these dangerous laws. If we do, next year, thousands more dads will have a happy Father's Day.
Trayvon Martins' mother, Sabrina Fulton, issued a similar Mother's Day appeal last month. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country.